2 weeks in a row of 90s rock and roll is, I know, a bit much, but I feel like this album really complements Blind Melon's album quite well, and so I figured I'd tack this one on just kind of while I still had that Blind Melon feeling in my head. Really helped process this album and feel out how I really felt about it. So I appreciated that. So we're going to jump into a band that originally was named Sparrow, but they got a cease and desist letter from a label that had the same name already. They took a spoonerism of Chuck Berry from a drag queen that they knew named Buckcherry and came up with this. Their debut from 1999 through DreamWorks Records. Produced by Terry Date, this throwback rock record was pretty well received in both Canada and the United States, going gold in each country. It's the band's only album that they recorded as a four-piece ensemble, consisting of founding member Josh Todd taking on the vocals, Keith Nelson on guitars, Jonathan Brightman on the bass, and Devin Glenn on the drums. If you're into the classic 80s hard rock sound, that sex, drugs, rock and roll bravado, these guys were determined to take that sound, the emotion, that energy, and tear it into the new millennium. Fortunately, their glorification of drugs didn't lead to an untimely loss of one of their bandmates like the last case, but boy, these guys were a little bit hard to swallow after the last review, if I'm going to be honest, with their very first track being their biggest hit and containing a line, "I love cocaine, I love cocaine." So, with that being their general, simple rock and roll, hard formula, sort of throwback, nostalgic feeling to grab that popular mainstream appeal, I was pretty hesitant to jump into the rest of the album, but from this point on, it doesn't get as intense as In Your Face with sort of the hard drugs and flying high in that lifestyle, but it does remain kind of the backbone of this entire album at its core. Away from the themes and into the actual music itself here, they borrow the intro riff from Kiss's Shock Me, and they have Steve Jones, the Sex Pistols guitarist, play on top of this one to make a sound that's really familiar but brand new at the same time. Hard rock, just gruff, sing, shouty, simple lyrics, and some cleaned up production was still a pretty good formula for popularity even in 1999. Maintaining the sex and drugs, Crushed also keeps up that classic rock sound. Feeling heavily Rush inspired, this is their crowd appreciation, almost crowd addicted song, mentioning the love on the faces of everyone that makes all this connecting feel right, and then going back in the chorus and saying, "It's not enough for me, it's all I think about." Totally obsessed, totally a little bit crazy. I enjoy the energy on this one. Does get a little boring after a repetitive listening. The vocals on Dead Again border on emo rock, but the instruments are just pretty determined on this remaining a high tempo yet unremarkable classic rock song. But you are rewarded if you can get through these first three tracks, because you're in for a string of great ones in my opinion. Check Your Head is a desperate plea to challenge perspective. It starts off slowly but builds, adding more instruments, more intensity, up until the shouted hook just announces this song's title. Pretty fulfilling rock number with a solid message of not wasting time and chasing your dreams, being satisfied with not having anything but the passion inside you. Ripping metal guitars wail their way through the intro of Dirty Mind, but the core of the song is much closer to a skate rock track than the beginning would have suggested. Maybe if Billy Talent added a louder, heavier guitarist on top of everything. It's not my favorite track, but it does provide some interesting insight into the future of sort of pop punk rock. Another slow starting dream chaser here. This time it's a pop rock cut titled For the Movies. It creates a story just with the tempo alone, starting off with sort of a foot dragging pace, and then the bridge will come in and lighten up the atmosphere and sort of set a direction for you and send you just running past the chorus. It's a lot of fun. I think these guys do this style of song best. Shifting back to a more standard get up and dance 80s rock and roll feeling with a bit of a country flavor on it. It's the catchy Lawless and Lulu. It's upbeat, fun, simple. It feels like a clearer AC/DC track. Related is a song that sees them modernizing the production to more of the era that this was actually recorded in. It ends up taking away a little bit too much of the energy, a little bit too much of the grittiness, just cleaned up too much to the point where I just don't really get anything out of this track. Leaning further towards country with the twangy borderline. I really like the vocal performance on this one. I like the organ chords that are played throughout the chorus, but it feels disjointed and lacking in direction, and that's a little strange for a song that's about doing it. If you take that theme and you shift it towards the attitude and intention of Check Your Head or For the Movies, then you get the track Get Back. This one is way better, way more streamlined, and shows they know what they're doing and makes the last track a little bit more of a mystery. I don't think it's quite as effective as those. Maybe I just got a little used to the formula, or maybe understanding the motivations behind someone's intentions sometimes can ruin relatability. Baby is a psych rock ballad that has the band reaching its furthest back on this album into rock and roll's sexy past. It's similar to Borderline in a way, but with, again, better delivery and more conviction. I feel strong Third Eye Blind vibes from the track Drink the Water. Definitely heavier, but when the chorus comes in, it kind of just deflates and sinks the whole track. I thought this one had a lot of potential. They close it out with vocals similar to Billy Joe on Late Nights in Voodoo. Just an enjoyable, rocky send-off to end this on a pretty consistent note. While this wasn't quite enough to get me to check out their new material, I don't dislike this album. I think it was a neat check-in with the genre post-Blind Melon, as tough as it is to hear about them glorifying cocaine. Give Lawless and Lulu a try out those couple perspective shifters, and then, if you're up for it, give the rest a go. Thanks so much for checking out my review here, guys. If you want more, subscribe. I put out these every week. There's a huge array of random thrift shop reviews here. If you want to check them out, I'd appreciate that as well. Some recommendations based on how much I enjoy them is always super appreciated. Thanks again. Take good care. Lawless and Lulu. Everybody say Lawless and Lulu. Wow!